We throw the words around a lot, debt and deficit. Well, here's one way of explaining them. The deficit is basically the state of Uncle Sam's checking account used for everyday bills and deposits. Debt is Uncle Sam's credit card. When the checking account comes up short, the credit card makes up the difference. Scott, here's what happens. The government checkbook has two things in it. First off, the red stuff, which is what it has to pay, similar to things like, rent, water, insurance, etc. The government, though, pays for Medicare, Medicaid, federal salaries, benefits, unemployment, and more. This happens every day of the year. Then there is the money coming in, the green stuff, this green bar from tax revenues, fees, and other items. But as you can see, the green bar is clearly smaller than the red bar. Some days it is even, some days it is even a little higher. But most often it's more red than green, leaving at the end of the year a budget deficit. So Uncle Sam has to either stop and not pay some of these items over here or get some credit. So that's when the government goes over to this side here. It's credit card, if you will, dipping into it to pay for that deficit, the shortfall. Each year, the debt increases. Just like we grow balances on our credit cards, but every credit card has a credit limit. Uncle Sam's has one too, and it's topped out right now, fully red as you can see here. So based on that, there's two options. One, increase the debt ceiling, which has been done some 100 times before, or two, default on certain payments like Social Security, interest payments. While these other items will still be paid, Uncle Sam's credit rating gets hurt. Some might cancel the U.S. credit card even, or raise interest rates Uncle Sam pays to borrow money. And if that happens, you and I will pay more too, because banks borrow from the government every day. The debt and deficit, very relatable to Uncle Sam's checkbook and credit card. All right, let's bring in MSNBC political analyst Karen Finney, a former Democratic Committee Spokesperson, and Michael Maslansky, a Republican strategy. He also wrote The Language of Trust. Karen, let's start with you. We were just hearing about Plan C. What do you think? A GOP surrender, or is this a clever tactic?
It is a clever political tactic, but it is not a good policy solution. I mean, I find it very ironic considering that last week when there was raised this conversation about whether or not the president could use executive powers around the 14th Amendment, you had Republicans saying they would impeach him if he would try to do something like that. And now McConnell's trying to say, well, let's just, let's basically run home to daddy and make him take care of the debt and the problems that we've run up. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's really shirking responsibility to stay at the table and get a deal done.
Michael, if you believe this is a surrender, did the GOP overplay its hand early on in the debt negotiations? And if you believe this is a clever tactic, will it even work here?
Well, I think it's more a clever tactic than it is a surrender, but I think it may be a clever tactic to bring some of the people on the far right into line. Faced with a choice between just letting the president increase the debt limit unilaterally and getting a couple $1 trillion worth of cuts, there may be more rank and file members of the House who decide that the latter option is a better option. It brings them into line to fight for a deal that is more doable by presidential standards. Although I think fundamentally this is the president's problem, and he's going to have to be the one at the end of this who steps up and gets a deal done, probably with limited or no revenue increases or tax hikes.
Well, Karen, since he did bring that up, when Michael brings up the far right or the right, bringing them in line, there's the Tea Party. Will they agree with this idea coming from McConnell?
I think they probably won't, and I'll tell you what's interesting. What you hear from business leaders in Wall Street is that part of the reason there's a lot of economic insecurity around this conversation is exactly because of that, because those guys understand that neither McConnell nor Boehner can control their far right wing. So even though they've been sort of given the wink-wink to Wall Street saying, don't worry, we'll take care of it, they don't have confidence that they actually have the ability to do that. And Michael's wrong. This is a problem that both Congress and the president need to handle together. It's not appropriate to say it's one or the other. That finger pointing gets us nowhere.
I agree. It's not about finger pointing, but at the end of the day, the person who's got responsibility to get a deal done is the president. He has the ability to get a deal done now. He has thrown tax hikes on the table and revenue increases on the table. This was originally meant to be a debate about whether we increase the debt ceiling and whether we can cut spending as part of that deal. He's introduced tax hikes. It's going to end up being his choice whether he wants to play chicken and blow up a deal.
Actually,
Karen,
Michael,
I want to change subjects because we don't have a lot of time, and we'll certainly have more time to talk about the debt and negotiations going on with that.
Sure.
I want to switch over now. The 2012 fundraising. Big numbers coming out. That's why I don't want to miss this topic here.
Sure.
Obama's campaign announcing second quarter at $86 million. Romney's at $18 million here. This is a juggernaut.
Yeah. Oh, it's huge. I mean, and also if you look at those numbers, I mean, Obama has actually raised more. As far as we know, some of the presidentials on the Republican side haven't released their numbers, but I think it's pretty clear that he's raised more than the Republicans combined. He actually also beat his own record from last cycle. So it's pretty impressive numbers. The other thing that's impressive about his numbers is they brought in new donors. There's, in terms of the average contribution size and all of that, which shows, you know, what we look for in these numbers is kind of to get a sense of, you know, support, enthusiasm. They're looking good. Also numbers for Democratic members in the Senate, running for Senate and House, looking pretty good as well.
Right, Michael, to you finally here, 35 million is a combined number that Karen was alluding to here. But is it early on?
It's early on. I think that the Republican Party, there's still no clear leader, even though Mitt Romney's the front runner. And so people haven't made a decision about who they're going to give money to. There's going to be a lot of momentum on the Republican side to remove President Obama from office. The fact that the money hasn't been given yet doesn't mean it's not out there. And I think once there is a sense of who's going to lead the Republican Party into the presidential election, the money will flow. But it is a big number and a big obstacle for Republicans to overcome in order to unseat an incumbent president.
Michael, Karen, thank you so much. Certainly a couple of topics that we'll be having a lot of time to talk about in the coming weeks and months here.